Morning all, I thought I'd have another 15-minute game. So, Rajashekar, 1978. Is it going to be Sveshnikov? Okay, I can take the time out to play C4 here, because my F6 wasn't played. I'll do that just to get that sort of bind on D5. Now, no D6, so it's E5. If I take, he doesn't want his queen exposed, E5, where's the knight move? To H5, is that theory? Am I in a worse position after that? If I just take an E5 and bishop E2, if knight H5, is he going to sack a pawn? He could do. I think there was an exhibition game like that in the recent Classic, but I'm going to do it anyway. They did win as black, the Grandmasters at the Classic. I think it was something similar to this. Wait a second. There's check. I have to play knight C3. There'll be check. Winning the E5 pawn. Alright, I don't want a quick disaster. Let's have a quick look at the stats here. It's been up to 2105, this guy, in August of 2011. Okay, be a bit careful. So I've probably blown my advantage now, unfortunately, after just knight takes C6. Unless this bishop's going to be bad in the future, but I doubt it. It's going to play D6. Plays D6 here. Unless I sack a pawn with E5, takes Queen D8, King D8. Nebulous compensation. So I just carry on developing. So bishop E3, maybe. It's possible here. Unless D5. Let's get out of autopilot, because he could still play some surprising moves. D5 could sack a pawn usefully. Takes. There's bishop F3 of bishop B7. So D5 CD. Okay, it's not worth looking at too much, I hope. Okay, I've still got a bind. It's looking like a reasonable position. Would I want to play H3 or F3? Should I play F3? So asking for a D5? Because then there's no bishop F3. If he plays D5 as a temporary pawn sack. And why bishop B7 later. Another approach is F4 and bishop F3, keeping an eye on D5 and keeping an eye on G4. F3 seems to be susceptible to D5 here as a temporary pawn sack. So F4, is there any problem with F4? Say rook B8, B3, there's no knight E4 takes, bishop A1, just take. So B3, queen A5 to H5, B3, queen A5, rook C1, there's no queen H5. So I think this F4, bishop F3, then maybe, I don't know, G4, G5 later? Is that a bit too much? Okay, rook C1 here, just protecting that knight, and I want to play B3 next. If rook B8, is there anything wrong with that? Well, I hope not. So rook B8, B3. Okay, black's got a bit of pressure. Is he going to liberate here with D5? I would seem to lose a pawn here. So this A7's eyed, that's useful for me. He could put pressure on C3 with, say, knight D7 and then somewhere else. What about bishop D4 if E5, bishop E3? By the way, I'm just uploading the Evergreen game. There's a bit of analysis there. I think it's cooler than the first version. Another game by the brilliant Anderson. Adolf Anderson, not Alf Anderson, a classic master. who created these kind of classics of great aesthetic beauty. So that's uploading in the background, or should be uploaded by now, and check out his 2 games on this channel, the Immortal game and the Evergreen game, the recent versions. So I think there's something to be gained from deeply analysing the classics, because then you see the real opportunities of both sides. It wasn't just a one-way story in the variations. Okay. So, big think here. Using up time resources, quite valuable. Where it moved 12. If he carries on, say, spending a minute a move, it's only 10 moves. He wouldn't last very long, that minute move. Trying to find a good plan here. What about e6? There's queen takes d6. d5, I'm hoping I can just safely take that. How does black generate counterplay? There's no queen h5 at the moment, the bishop on e2. Actually, that's another perk, maybe f. Now he's playing for d5, okay. Is it too late to play f4? d5, cd, cd, e5. Would I be busted to d4 going into a nasty pin? What about just queen d2 here? d5, cd, cd. There's knight takes d5, queen takes d2, knight takes e7, king f8. Or queen c2, is that more modest? It's getting out of there. d5, cd, cd, e5. I think queen d2. There's also another option of after d5, cd, cd, rook f d1. So queen d2, d5, cd, cd, rook f d1. There's a pin on the rook. Also, there's e5 as an idea. I think f4 might be good to be able to play cd and e5. I'm not sure about bishop d4. Maybe just queen d4 there. No, not queen d4. Quick rooks on it. Bishop d4. Or just ef. Okay, I'm going to play this. cd, cd, e5. If he plays d4, ef because the rook. No. Alright, okay, there's big trouble ahead if d5. I don't know. This hasn't been worked out properly. d5, cd, cd, e5, d4, bishop d4. At least I've shut out the bishop. He's got a nasty. Okay, he's not playing for d5. He's on c3. Bishop d4. There's e5. Can I play just bishop d2? Is that a passive move but good? Just evict that queen. Or queen c2. There's bishop c3 maybe. Does he want to give up the dark square bishop, or just queen d2? Queen d2 looks logical. He's no longer threatening d5. In the future f5, but then knight e5, bishop h6. I think queen d2. I'll play queen d2. It looks like a battery here, as well as protecting c3. There's f5 and bishop h6. There's knight c5 as an opportunity for bishop c3 and knight e4. So bishop f3 against bishop c3 threat. Bishop f3 again. d5 seems suppressed. Potentially then. Okay, he's threatening bishop c3. I'm going to protect. I think there's no problem with bishop f3. I'm hoping. Is there rook b3 maybe? Dynamic? Hope not. Don't think so. Just queen d3, knight c1 just takes and protecting c3 again. So d5 ruled out. f5 might be on the cards, but he's always got bishop e5. It's not such a big deal, the attack there. What about just rook f d1 with the idea of e5? Maybe even bishop c5. I was check, otherwise queen d8. Rook fd1, king h1, get the king out of harm's way. Knight d5 also hits the queen, queen d2, knight e7, there's king f8. So the bind looks better here. e4 looks under control a little bit against tactics. The knight does look potentially useful. With the queen on a5, he's ruled out a5, a4. So what is it doing on a5 really? Doesn't seem to be major problems with the position. I could create some with bishop d4, there's e5, and then give up. That loses e5 control. Bishop e3 takes. I've lost e5 control, giving him pressure on e4. So I've got to be cautious here. f5 will also create problems with bishop e5 potentially, without a clear attack, because my rook's now blocked in by the bishop. So what about just central play? What about just rook fd1 or king h1? I think king h1, just to get out of these check lines. Maybe queen f2. There's rook. There's bishop c3. So bishop c5 clearly doesn't work. Queen takes. Actually, knight a4 is almost winning the queen. If it wasn't for queen a3 there. Interesting. He's always got d takes, blocks in the bishop. Uses d file, gives d4 for bishop d4. Bishop d4 e5. So there's no f5, there's no e5, there's no bishop c5. Rook fd1 doesn't seem to lose, it seems to increase pressure on d5 anyway. So rook fd1, queen e1. Maybe the queen can slip out over here. Or do I go in with f5, bishop e5, but where would the targets be? And he's also got the knight hopping back to e5. That happened recently in a 30-minute game against David Sands. He had the knight on a5 and all of a sudden it went back to e5. Okay, so he's got control here, but he's giving me f5 with tempo now. Tempting it with tempo. You can take with the queen after that. Bishop c6. Maybe not so hot. Bishop h6, bishop e5. Yeah. Not so clear. f5. Alright, let's go through that again. Knight c5, bishop h6, bishop e5. What about knight d5 there? Because takes, there's knight takes c7 check, there's no king f8. I'd rule out king f8. That might be worth it. And if queen takes here, maybe all sorts of things. As well as bishop c6, there's, or just bishop e4, just targeting f7. I think I'm going to go for that. I'm tempted now because this knight d5 line looks nifty. It looks as I'm giving up a huge dark square, but I'm trying to exploit this queen, which, as we see in the Evergreen game, the queen was actually an issue in sub variations. So bishop h6 here. So the idea now, bishop e5, I might have knight d5 hitting the queen, knight e7 check, then recapture the queen. Is the knight stranded? Maybe. Rook e8 stranded. Oh, can I play that? Okay, it's crunch time. Knight d5, queen d2, knight e7, king h8, bishop d2, rook e8, knight stranded. Looks like it. There's no Zoetians, I guess a knight d5 takes. If I had another move, there'd be f6, bishop g7 mate. Maybe that's not that helpful to note. So knight d5, queen d2, knight e7, king h8. Bishop d2. Rook E8. The attempt bishop G5 would fail there to rescue the knight. Miserably F6. Bishop H5. Nope. FG. FG might not be so bad, but F file from bishop G4 to E6. FG opens up some pressure on F7. That might be handy for bishop G4 and then knight D5 later. There'll be a rescue plan with rook F7. Let's go with FG. I might have damaged my pawns, but I'm getting this semi-open. Achilles heel F7 being exposed maybe. So bishop G4. Maybe rook F7 on the cards. Queen F2. I think now there's King H7 for the king as well. So bishop G4 here. I'm asking for D5. Nearly. It's Queen E3. Bishop takes F8. Just bishop F4 for a sec, just to try and get rid of this bishop. There's king in the light of King H7. I don't know. He's used up a lot of time resources there. Okay, slowing down again. 20-minute move, it'll only be like 5 moves. Okay. Let's look at this again. Knight D5, Queen D2, Knight E7 here. King moves. Knight still stranded here. But Knight D5, Queen D2, there's Knight F6 now, structural damage. Knight F6 takes Bishop D2. Is D5 on? Probably. ED, CD, C5, that's a move that rings a bell in a recent Wang game in the Hastings. As an idea. Is it too committal? Do I need to release the pressure like that, given his in-time pressure? To simplify queens? What about just Queen E3? I'll just play Queen E3. If D5, ED, CD, CD. I think Queen E3 might be a good move. Although I'm offering A2 there. But his king safety surely is shot to pieces if he gives up the dark square bishop. Good positional sacrifice. Let's do that. Give up A2. Tempt him. Does he really want to give up his defensive bishop? Speculative, but surely that's not enough to go for A2. Bishop C3, Rook C3, Queen A2. Nope. Oh, he's on D4 now. Oh, that looks nasty. Bishop D4, Knight D4. Go back here. Or to G3. What if I mess this up? Okay. If I go back to G3, maybe to E1 later. Not so bad on G3, I hope. We'll set Bishop G5. Now I'm offering an exchange sack. Whoops. Non-intentional, but again getting rid of the dark square bishop. So there's two temptations here. Win a pawn or win the exchange. Both could result in damaged king safety. So Bishop G5. Is he tempted for that now? Just win the exchange. Otherwise, maybe Rook C2 if he doesn't want to take that exchange opportunity. Using up time again. Bishop G5 or Bishop C3? Let's have a look at that. Bishop G5, Queen moves to D3, say. Okay, Knight C5, Queen C2 maybe. So he takes Rook C1. I can look forward to dark squares. Also bishop g4 will be on e6 and f7 pressure. So bishop e6 and e5 will be on g6 actually. From d3 that could be useful for e5s. For bishop g4. Okay. So is he going to play bishop g5? Blimey, this is a luxurious thing here. Bishop g5, queen d3, bishop c1, rook c1. Hasn't gone for it. What about inviting positively bishop g5 if I play bishop g4 here? Actually, there's queen f3 straight off the bat. For bishop c1, there's queen f7 there. So I think bishop g4. Although that is releasing pressure off d5, but I'm threatening now bishop e6. Surely. Wow, so isn't bishop e6 takes queen h6? That's dangerous. He's going to get his queen in, queen g5 if he can. I'm saying deflect the queen or block the queen. Play a knight sack, cd, queen h6 on g6. Otherwise queen g5 end of attack. So bishop e6, fe, knight d5, cd, queen h6. There's no rook defense resource. Bishop g7, queen g6. I could go for that. That's tempting for bishop e6. Although yesterday when I double pawns that was nightmare after. But here, let's look at this again. Bishop e6, bishop g5. Bishop e6, fe, queen h6. Bishop, queen g5. What about just knight d5 so I can get this kind of bind on the position? I can win the exchange on d7, blocking this bishop. I think I'll go for that. I think I'm going to go for that. That's tempting as well. So I get an exchange and blocking the bishop, I hope. It's immediately counter-sacking. Any clever move here? Oh dear, immediately counter-sacking. Alright, I get the c file. His rooks are blocked in. So bishop f3 or rook d1. Oh, beyond bishop e6. What about rook? There's all this bishop g5 again. Bishop f3, queen g5. I'll keep the pressure on e6. What about getting out of the exchange losing line with rook ce1? Got pressure on e6. His rooks are now just not looking that clever behind the pawn. I've lost the pawn. Bishop e6 here. Queen e3 is bishop f7. If takes, then okay. So queen e2. There's knight d4. Queen d1 there. Maybe queen e2. There's no knight d4. Knight d4. There's queen d1. I'll go for that. We'll keep the tension going. There's pressure on e6. Knight d4. Okay, so queen d1. So I'm on d7. Actually, isn't rook f6 a threat? Okay, structural damage here with bishop f5. Anything stronger? It's bishop f4, queen h4. There's no h4 and there's knight g3, so I think I'll take just to sort of get the structural damage anyway. Bishop f4. If Queen g4, there's rook f3, so I'll go for that. Because then there's rook g3. So rook f3 looks good anyway. Get that guy in to g3. So a pawn down here, but with structural damage. So there's severe time pressure coming up. Can't use more than 20 seconds to move. How long will he last? Okay. G3, blocking my own thing. I can't play. What about bishop G3? Plays bishop G5. I'll target F5 at least 4c6. So bishop G5. Rook F1, there's no F4 there, so E6 for the moment. I have to be content with that. Maybe bishop F4 again, at least I've achieved something there. Try and weaken his king again. Maybe rook H3 this time. So rook G3 threat, takes. Okay, if I want him to take Queen D2 or Queen D4 threatening Queen H8. Bishop D6 is not on, rook D1. Look at the specific moves. Rook G3 is F6. What about H4 there? That looks tempting. Queen H5. There's no Queen H5. So it looks like H4 is a specific move here. Just winning the bishop, okay. So bishop takes, looks pretty strong. F6, does it need looking at? There's bishop F4 there at minimum. I can take on D8 here. I think he's cracked. It says thanks. I'll say thanks. It was a very exciting game, I thought. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Let's have a quick look. So I think this was a bad move, knight c6, based on e5, which doesn't work because of queen a5. Whoops. Still, the position's not totally lost. It's okay, probably. In fact, it might still be okay. I mean, better, slightly, tiny bit better, maybe for white. So knight d5. Okay, I thought this was clever because strategically blocking the bishop, winning d7, but I'm not sure. Probably is unsound. Does mean the rooks are also a bit silly. Then there's still opportunities later. Even if I didn't want to take that rook, say knight c7, rook f6, takes queen h6. So there's still sort of attacking opportunities. Or even rook f6, bishop e1 to c3. So that was an interesting sack anyway. He immediately countersacked to keep his game. His piece is not blocked in, but now starts cracking time pressure. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks so much.